Awesome, Mike. I think that's spot on. So Mike and his mom brought along some resources related to a communication camp and the organization. So she was just going to tell you guys a bit about that, and then we'll open up for some more questions.
Hi. I just wanted to put a couple things on the table. Mike put together a packet for new AAC users. I'm not sure we have enough for everyone, so if you're with the same organization, you know, maybe you could just take one of them. Mike did write a book, and it's $5. It's about, it's to help kids just starting with school, and the $5 just covers the cost of publishing the book. Couple of things that I wanted to talk about. Again, I don't have enough of these for everyone, but if you want to pick it up, if you're interested, there are few camps in Wisconsin for kids and adults that use AAC. One that I want to push so you can let your consumers know would be Camp Chatter Matters. And that is from Variety Charities. It's a free camp that is usually in June, and you have to apply for it ahead of time so you can watch the AAC newsletter. It will give you information about that, as well as if you log on to Variety Charities. But it's so unique because it's the AAC user and the whole family that goes to camp. And Mike and I have been volunteering to be at the camp as mentors and resource persons. This year was our 3rd year, so we're very thankful for that. Another camp in Indiana, again, that's a free camp. You just have your hotel stay, would be Camp Possibilities. That's a theater camp that a speech therapist that Mike's friends with, she puts on. Again, a wonderful opportunity. Just to let you know, Mike talked about USAC, and there are some professional organizations presented or represented here today. So maybe you can talk to Mike about the corporate memberships. USAC is just a wonderful organization. It's part of ISAC, which is the international organization, and they do a lot of advocacy and legislative work, but maybe something that you don't know about what they do is they do a lot of disaster relief. Everywhere has been hit with a ton of disasters. You have all the hurricanes and the floods and all the yucky stuff that they've had happened, in Texas and in Florida. So when you've got 2 seconds to leave your house, what can you bring with you? So a lot of people, they lost their communication devices, and USAC has been instrumental in getting people paper devices, actual devices. So they did come up with some buttons, and they're $2 a button, and they're kind of cool as far as the sayings on here. It says, "Silence is not always golden. Wait 15 seconds, I can communicate." And the buttons are $2, and that money goes to disaster relief as far as the to support USAC. And just to plug again, Closing the Gap, again, that's close, another organization that puts on a wonderful conference in September this year. We do have a sign-up sheet too. So again, that can just be up at the table. Mike does a newsletter for Wisconsin AAC Network, and if you just include your name very clearly and your email address very, very clearly, we can get you on Mike's email list, and the newsletter goes out 4 times a year. Or on the back of the brochure is the email address, and then like us on your Facebook page too. And some recent requests that the Wisconsin AAC Network got was from a mom looking for a mentor. When Mike started out with the Appleton Area School District, he was the first one that used a device, a speech generating device. Can you imagine how lonely that was, being the first one? So I think that's why we're so into advocacy and mentoring. So we're trying to pair her daughter up with a mentor in the part of the state that they're living in. And then Mike got another request from a mom who is trying to learn more about the Toby and the Dynavox from a parent's perspective and through Camp Chatter Matters. Mike met a mom named Christine. Her daughter is Cheyenne, and she's just, when we met them last year, Cheyenne was, what'd you say, a very beginner user? Wow, she came back to camp after she was at Camp Chatter Matters, where she had a chance to interact with other kids, because she lives in a small area, Seymour, Wisconsin, pretty small area. She doesn't have a lot of peers that use devices. She got exposed to Mike and other peers that use devices, and she is just chatting away now with her device. It's so cool. And her mom got the advocacy bug too, went through a parents training program, came up with the idea for the family group with Mike. They've had a couple of outings. You know, I know, Jill, you were at one of the outings. I've been at a couple of their outings. So again, you know, it really takes just one person connecting with the right people to get that word out there. So again, you know, just sign up if you're interested in getting the newsletter.
So Mickey here from DHS. I just wanted to let you know I circulated a pair of these per table so that you could view them. I put what we have remaining on the back table, and I'm going to work with Lisa to help archive some of these additional handouts. We'll get them scanned and make them accessible for all of you as well. And so I'll help to get this information on the back table after our training too.
Great, thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, we have time. I think the break is at 11:15, so we have about 45 minutes that we can end a little early, but otherwise Mike and I are happy to take questions and discussion. I also brought along a few communication systems, so if there's anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to ever play around with one or look at one and just kind of get familiar, I'm also happy to pull a few out up here or in the back, and if people want to explore those, we can use some time for that as well. Yeah, it looks like...
So I'll take questions one by one, and let me run to give you the microphone so that we can also capture your voice and question and comments on our webinar recording.
Thank you. That was really interesting to both of you, and good resources, by the way. I was kind of bit by the augmentative bug, if you will, years ago when I worked with a woman who had cancer and had her tongue removed. So that was my very first exposure to it, and I was able to give her some decent, effective communication.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wondering what SLPs and other specialists feel about non-SLPs dabbling in augmentative communication through the ILCs.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what Meg and I just talked about is if there's a question that both of us have something to respond about, I'm going to respond while he's getting his message ready, and then he'll respond too. So Mike, if there's anything you want to add, please feel free to get that ready too. We are more than happy to have anybody and everybody involved in AAC. I think the big thing is that typically a device recommendation has to come from a licensed SLP in order for it to be fundable through an insurance or a Medicaid or a Medicare. But apart from that side, we really are happy to have any professionals or families or people implementing strategies that they think might work with people to get them going and get them some means to communicate. We certainly wouldn't discourage people from doing that. And I think the other thing we hear a lot from, because we have such a long waiting list and it is hinderative, we do hear from a lot of people around the state like, well, what should we do to get started while they're waiting for you? We refer them to you, but we're waiting. And they're worried about, a lot of the worries that come up are, what if we use a symbol set that's not what you end up picking on the device? Or what if we start trying with their hands and there's a different access method that really works better? We would say start somewhere. Starting somewhere is always better than starting nowhere. And then when they do get in for us, these people are so much farther ahead with their familiarity with systems, with the, having that exposure and that modeling, even if the symbols are not the exact ones that we end up selecting on a device for them. any modeling and exposure is better than none. So I think if you feel stuck, try what you know and try where you can and reach out to us for ideas for where to get started, but just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, that's really good to know because, we have the benefit of using the TAP and the USF grant to get, effective communication, and that's how we kind of supply our loan closet. So sometimes it's the first chance for someone to get to see it when we're out in the community with those devices. So
that's a great point. The other thing I'll tell you guys too is that the representatives in Wisconsin for the device vendors are wonderful people. And they are happy. They go all over the state and they're happy to bring their devices out to you and help you try them with someone. So if you meet somebody and you're like, I know somebody else who has a device by this company and I just want to see how it goes with it. The vendor will bring it out and they'll help you to set it up and try it. The caveat with that is Medicaid and Medicare will typically only fund one device within 5 to 7 years. So don't let the representative do their sales pitch and get you to get something funded through an insurance company that maybe isn't the best match. But if you want to try it, if you want to look at it, the vendor reps vary. So one of them, Talk to Me Technologies rep, was one of our students. She's a speech language pathologist. So she has the background about how do you match the language and how do you match the system and how do you teach it. Some of the other reps don't have the speech and language background. So you kind of have to just be a conscious consumer with doing that. But I think it's a great way to access some of the systems and see what they do. And the vendors are happy to come to team meetings. They're happy to come to homes. And they love to tell you about their devices and show you how they work. So they can be another resource as well.
So to both of your points, what you're speaking about is also care coordination. And so as an advocate and as professionals, when you hear of your consumers going in for hospitalization, perhaps for surgery, UW was great if you just had those community advocates, social workers, families helping to sit at the table and say, while you're in for your scoliosis surgery, could we get an additional consult for speech language pathology and for their communication devices, their seating devices. So
Absolutely.
Don't hesitate to ask. And if you need help learning how to package all that together, please reach out to us. It works really great and it gets the system internally moving along and helps with that payment piece. And
Yes.
they end up leaving happy consumers.
Good. Mike's getting a message ready too, related to that topic. Yeah.
Just in regards to as far as the wait lists, I just wanted to connect with you, sir, as far as I do know a speech therapist in the Green Bay area that's initiating her own company doing evaluations. It would be on a private pay basis, but it's nice for parents to have that as a second option.
Did the options for independent living hear that? Okay. Sure, I will.
Mike, while you're finishing, can I just say one thing about your device? Okay. I wish that we had one of those like document cam things that would go over his shoulder so you could see projected up here what he's doing. Because I think it's a really cool thing for people to see the way that he communicates using his device. His language system would not feel intuitive to a lot of us, but given the teaching and the learning he had from when he was a little kid, he's a master at using this really complex system, and it makes it really efficient for him to get to the words he needs and construct everything, like we said, exactly the way he wants to say it, when he wants to say it. So we should think about that for the next time, having like a, yeah, like a document cam that.
Feel free, wander up behind him and kind of watch him a little bit because it is kind of interesting to watch. He likes to, when he speaks to younger kids, we have a little more We have some fun with that audience. We make them guess as far as, how he's using his device. And, the saying is true. Kids say the darndest things, that he just thinks it and the words are there. It's his hands, he moves his hands and that's a invisible ray and then it ends up on the screen. So they've come up with some really great creative options that someone, should maybe market some of those options that little kids have for ideas.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to just comment on that, the brain messaging idea, because we do have people who come in and ask us about that. There is no computer that you can hook up electrodes and it will type out your thoughts, unfortunately. Right, or fortunately, good point. But what they are doing in brain interface technology is that they are looking at ways for your brain, for the excitement and relaxation of your brain to control a switch. So just like we were showing, like that kiddo who used his voice to activate it, it would be your brain, the electrode would read as the device was scanning through the options and it got to the one you wanted, you would excite your thoughts and think hard about that's what I want, and it would activate the system. So that's where that technology is at right now. But it's a cool thing that they're working on. One of our coworkers a few years ago got to try it for playing Pong, like the computer game, and she said you had to excite your brain to get the Pong paddle to slide up to meet the ball, and then you had to calm your brain to have it go back down. And she was like, I couldn't do it. She said the Pong was just at the top the whole time. I couldn't calm my brain down. So I think that's the other thing that's interesting about it, is you have to have really some intense control over your body and your mind to use it. But they're working on it. So Mike, I just want to confirm, is this going back to the question about other professionals working on AAC? Okay, perfect.
Does he need more time, or?
Two of our awesome friends were trained in education.
So two friends of yours who are advocates and users and supports for AAC are education backgrounds? Is that? Okay, great. So yeah, he knows even people who are working on AAC and being advocates, even though maybe the speech and language wasn't their background, but it's a passion area for them. So yeah, that's cool, Mike. Is one of them Sharon? Yeah, so Sharon she has a background in, I think yeah, she's a special education focus, right? But she's become her district's assistive tech consultant and support. So definitely. Okay, go ahead.
Two issues that I've run into with teenagers who I was working on with AAC devices. One was probably more of an issue with the parent, and the fact that she wanted to be able to curse. And I felt she should be able to curse just like any other, and she should get punished by it if her father wants her to punish, but she should have the ability. That's something I don't know if anybody else has run into, but maybe you can comment on that topic. The other issue is, and I wasn't able to be super helpful on this, is that she could use her AAC device around home, but she wouldn't use it around friends because she was feeling too socially anxious about it and afraid of how people would view her.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have a couple comments about both of those things, and then I would imagine Mike probably has great comments about his experience with wanting to say what he wants to say, and also that kind of peer interaction piece.
Two of our awesome friends were trained in education, Kelly.
Oh, Kelly? Kelly's the other one? I don't know if I met Kelly. But, okay, cool. Well, I'll talk about the cursing, then you can talk about the cursing, then you can talk about the cursing, and then we'll circle around to the peer interaction piece. So I agree with you. I think that people should have the ability to say what they want to say, and they should also have the repercussions that anybody else would have. So we would encourage families to, if those are things that they want on their device, you put them on there and you talk to them about when it is and isn't appropriate to use words like that. And it's not just cursing. We have comments about that with like sexuality and body part words. It's important that you have access to talk about your body and sexuality, but when you're in 5th grade and you're at recess, that's probably not an appropriate time to do it. So I agree. We typically encourage families and teams to not censor messages because people should be able to say what they want to say, but you have to do the teaching around it too. And you have to use the punishment and the things that you would with any other child and teach them like, nope, those aren't words that we can be using right now. So I agree with you in that sense.
Yeah, I also agree, and that has happened, and then you have the consequences as a result of that. But as an advocate, I needed to advocate for Mike at school because what they would do is take his device away. Yeah. So, instead of taking his device away, you need to, then he had to go to morning detention or whatever it was, just like anyone else would. I guess that's what I advocated. Not that it's okay for him to do it, but I want him to have the same punishment that anybody else would have had, and then, same punishment or a punishment at home too, just like his brother would have had. We've always tried to, right or wrong, be equal in how we approach things with Mike. But yeah, that's not everyone, but that was some person's solution, just to take the device away at school.
And one thing I'll tell people if they suggest that is like, how would you do that with a speaking child? Like, would you ever put duct tape over a child's mouth? You wouldn't. Would you put like something on that you wouldn't. So I think even drawing the comparison of taking a device away from somebody is like putting duct tape over their mouth, which is not acceptable. Mike, did you ever get detentions? Yeah. I thought you might have. So Mike's getting a message ready. Is this about the cursing message or the cursing one? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Do you mind if I talk a little bit about the peer? Yeah. Okay, cool. So the peer question is a really great one too, because that does come up. We have a lot of users who are willing, and not just peer, but also other adults, less familiar adults, doctors, things like that. We have a lot of users who have more comfort with certain people than they do with other people. And 2 strategies that I will talk about are, the first is that we often encourage family members to be the ones who are encouraging their user to use it with other people versus like us. And what we say is kids, or well, in your case adults, will talk with everyone else. They'll start to talk with everyone else the way they talk with their mom and dad. So if you think about like speaking children, they start to learn the things they say with their family, and then they say those things with other people and test it out and see what reactions they get. And so a lot of times we're the ones who are saying like, let's try to use it with your friend, or let's try to use it with whoever, but having their parents be involved can be a great comfort strategy, because their parents know them better than anybody else, and they can be there to say like, oh, it looks like you're struggling, let me help you so you can be successful, and then we'll keep going. So that's one thing I always talk about. And then, because we do have times where families are like, well, we understand them at home, so we don't use the device. But we need them to use it at school with their friends, and we need them to use it when we go to the doctor, and the doctor doesn't understand what's wrong and why we're there. But if you don't use it at home, the likelihood of you using it comfortably and successfully elsewhere is much diminished. So that's one thing I talk about. The other thing I talk about is what Mike and his mom already talked about, is the peer mentorship. There's been not a ton of research, but there's been some recent research about like pairing an older, competent, comfortable AAC user with new learning young AAC users and having them be a mentor. And there's been a lot of success with that piece, because a lot of times the user will be more comfortable using it with a peer who also uses AAC, and then after some time, as they get more comfortable using it with a peer who's also using the same, then they become more comfortable using it with other peers. So if you have any opportunity to match up with someone else who's using a device, that can be a great strategy too. And I would imagine that Mike and his AAC network are happy to help try to make those pairings as well.
The other thing is it doesn't necessarily have to be a peer who also uses AAC. One thing that we started pretty early were Mike had AAC buddies. So there were like 3 or 4 really close friends that would come over to our house and they'd play games with Mike on the device, but then they'd take turns, so they would actually use Mike's device too and respond to him sometimes using the device. So, it probably takes a pretty good friend to try to do that with, but, that would be another avenue to try.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that idea. One thing actually going off of that too is if you guys work in groups where you have multiple kids or multiple adults who have disabilities, we like to do the same kind of peer modeling in that same way, even if we're not targeting like a specific user, supporting a specific user. We do a lot in like, I go to this classroom in Middleton Cross Plains about once or twice a month, and they have their early childhood program is set up where they have a special education teacher, the speech language pathologist, and the occupational therapist, and an aide are the professionals who are in that classroom the entire early childhood morning. So every kid gets immersion with speech and language OT, and then they have an SEA and a teacher who are helping them throughout the programming. And what we've done there is we've set up symbols throughout the room, and we encourage all the kids to use them, the speaking kids and the kids who are using AAC. And so it's really cool because you'll look over and like one little kid will be modeling for the other kid and saying, I don't like that. I don't like that when you take my toy. And it's really cool to see these little human beings who are like, I can communicate this way too. And it just makes it feel like a part of the culture there, and it's really cool to see.
My teacher put tape on my communication device.
So yeah, going back to the swearing thing, did she put it on there to cover it? Oh. That wasn't probably so nice, huh? No, I think that's not a good idea. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I am glad that Linda brought that up about stepping on toes for the SLPs. As an independent living consultant, I was contacted last year by a woman with TBI, and she could speak, but it was very, some days were better than others, let's say that.
Okay.
So the day when she was having a bad day, she had a lot of trouble communicating. So I showed her a couple tablets with some free apps, and she wanted to use it with her phone, so we kind of devised, well, if you have this app and you can talk, you put your phone next to the speaker and you can talk that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then her SLP set her up with somebody from Talk to Me Technologies. And I went to the meeting with them, and so instead of getting the tablet, she ended up with the speech device from Talk to Me Technologies. My question is, would that be considered an evaluation like you would do at one of your centers? I'm not thinking of what the center's name was, but
CASC, yeah, yep.
yes. Would that be kind of the same thing, or not as involved, or not as
Yeah.
in-depth?
It's the same. Ours would be more in-depth. We have all the devices from all the vendors. So that's one thing, just going back to what I said about having a vendor come and talk with you, is one caveat is they'll only show you their systems. So we have devices from every single vendor and can look at all the systems across all of them to make sure we're getting the right feature match.
Well, what I did was before the meeting, I kind of thought of that. So I brought her some videos to watch of
Okay.
other products. So I said, this is what you're going to be seeing tomorrow with this woman that we're meeting with, but here's some other things and the features that they have. And
Okay.
so she was a little bit more educated going in.
Oh, good. And do you know, did another speech language pathologist help with getting the funding for that device?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Well, Talk to Me Technologies had somebody within
Okay. Because that's
helping
one.
with that as well.
Okay, because
Thank
that's
you.
one thing that even if the vendor is a speech language pathologist by background, they cannot make the recommendation for insurance funding because they are considered a biased party because they work for one. They have a financial stake in choosing their systems. Where if you work with a place like CASC where we don't get kickbacks from any of the companies, we feel like we have more responsiveness from some vendors than others, but overall it's kind of an even playing field. So we're choosing the systems really based on the needs of the individual. And so there isn't that bias piece. In fact, when we write up the recommendations, we have to show that we tried more than one system in order to make the determination that that one was appropriate. So I think that's one thing too that is important to reiterate, that there should be trials of more than one thing to really confirm that you've got the right system and the right match. And one thing I'll also say as kind of an apology is I know there have been times where we have been, and I think anybody can be guilty of this, but I know we've been guilty of it too, where we meet a client who's been on our waiting list for a long time. Therapists are busy and they have big caseloads and big reports to write, and we don't always reach out to the team around us for that person and say, what's been tried already? What have you done? Where have you gone with it? And so sometimes all of a sudden we're saying, hey, we're getting this device for so-and-so, and we think everybody's going to be as excited as we are about it, but we don't realize that the team has already been going a whole different path. So if that happens, know that we aren't doing it spitefully, and we never mean to step on toes, but sometimes when we're making decisions about the systems we're recommending, it's because the features, we know those really in-depth features, and there might be just small nuanced differences between a system that you've been looking at and the one that we recommend. And we are happy to talk with people about those decisions, but we're not always good at doing that. We don't time, and everybody has these constraints, not just us, but time and resources often make it difficult, and sometimes we're not reaching out like we should. So please know that if that happens, we would love to hear from you, and we would love to rectify situations where things didn't get explained well or we didn't do great coordination of care.
So before we get that next question, unless Mike has a question, that does go to that point of coordination of care. I know there are many families and clients whose teachers and home therapists and primary care providers will help print out summaries and assessments, and the families will just put it in a 3-ring binder with page protectors.
That's a great idea.
And they'll take pictures of things that have worked and pictures of the person when they're healthy and doing what they do every day.
Yeah.
So those stories are worth 1,000 words and help when we get the hour or 3 with you guys.
I love that idea, because a lot of times when people come for an eval, they've been on the waiting list for like a year. Sometimes the families don't know who referred them, why they referred them, where they were in their life when they were referred. And we start asking a million questions, and the families are like, I'm not sure, I don't know. I mean, they have enough to keep straight without having to remember the name of a page set that was tried on a device. So that would be amazing if you guys have things that you can send with families about, this is what we've tried, here are pictures or videos of what they've done, these are the things that have changed over the time since they've been referred. That is so helpful to us, because we're asking these families questions that a lot of times they don't know the answers to, and it's not their fault, but that would be so helpful if you guys have things like that you can send with. Mike, are you composing a message about that piece? Okay. Do you mind? Was there another question? I thought I saw another. Yeah. Do you mind if we take this question while you're getting that message ready? Okay. Great.
I'm from Arkansas, DBR. In my line of work, excuse me, we're seeing a lot of people come back from the war with brain injuries and causing a lot of communication problems. What type of service, have you seen an increase in this where you're at, and what type of services are you providing to that population?
Yeah, that's a great question. So talking about people who have traumatic brain injuries and have communication impairments secondary to that, our clinic has not historically seen as many people who have TBI, but it's growing. It's growing and growing. And part of the reasons for that are the Weissman Center, where we're located, has historically been a center for research and services related to developmental disabilities, so people who come into the world with some differences in their development, but they're working more and more into the neurodegenerative and like physical and other disability areas. So we're moving into those areas more with the research and the services is part of what's helping. get more of that in. And then the other side of it is that we're partnering more with like the VA in Madison. We've started working with some of their speech language pathologists there. And so it was kind of a matter of that we weren't really linked in with that population, but it is growing. So we're happy to have referrals for people who have TBI or other acquired disabilities. The other thing I'll say too is that historically, with the funding being different in Dane County for physical disability funding versus developmental disability funding through the state, through the county, with Family Care and IRIS kind of synchronizing all of that into a single system for everybody who has developmental disability, physical disability, or aging supports, that's making it easier for us to serve more populations too, because it's kind of making it more uniform the way that we work with people from different systems. I actually have one client right now who has a TBI that he sustained when he was like 20, and he's in his 40s now, and he uses a PRC device similar to Mike's, and he has been coming to our clinic for 15 plus years, but he's not the norm. I would say we need more of those people to get referred, so I would be happy to talk with you more about that.
And because this is recorded, I just want to put a plug in for that Dane County issue of funding. If you have clients in that Dane County area, you could refer them back and should refer them back over to the Aging Disability Resource Center of Dane County off Sherman Avenue, because they are the publicly funded enrollment disenrollment agent that can help sort out those issues, and they are super savvy at also helping to advocate for what the consumer would need, and would partner back with the ILCs and our offices to get what they need.
Yeah.
So, more questions?
The Weissman Center is in Madison, Wisconsin. It is across the street from the hospital. So the hospital's kind of got a loop of road around it, and the main hospital is kind of up in the loop. The Children's Hospital is kind of down to the left, and we're across the street from the Children's Hospital. And then the VA it's kind of like a tri-hospital, regular, like the adult hospital, Children's Hospital, and VA, and then we're just across the street. So that's been really conducive to us getting more involved with like the inpatient care as well as the clinics and the outreach. So, yeah. Do you guys know more? Would you like me to tell a little more about the Weissman Center overall? Because I think it could be a great resource for you guys beyond just us. So the Weissman Center is a UCED, which is a University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities and Neurodegenerative Diseases, which is a mouthful, so we just call it UCED. But there are UCEDs across the country, and it's a network of universities. Usually they're associated with a university that has a hospital associated with it. And the UCED funds things like research into developmental and neurodegenerative diseases, all the way from bench science research all the way into translational and outreach research. It also funds clinical work with populations who have developmental or neurodegenerative diseases. So it looks different at each UCED, but every UCED has a clinical piece. Our clinic does primarily evaluations and recommendations for services, but we don't, our CASC at the Weissman Center is one of the only programs that does therapy. The rest are primarily evaluation and resource clinics. Another piece or another branch of the UCED mission is training. So there are always students involved at these university centers learning how to provide clinical care, how to do research, how to provide outreach in the community and make things happen across their state. And then the other piece is they all have a LEND program. I think all of them have the LEND program. And LEND is a piece of that educational part of it, but it's not just students, it's also consumers, family members, local advocates, and it's a training program where these multidisciplines, so the family members, the users, there's speech and language, OT, PT, special ed, like the disciplines of students is vast, and everybody comes together and learns about how do we create communities and how do we provide excellent services and how do we provide or work on great research related to disability. So the center, there's so much going on there. I couldn't name all of the different things that happen there. But it's an amazing resource, and it's also the regional resource center for that area of the state if you need help finding resources related to services, related to funding and things like that. So you can also contact the Weissman Center if you're just looking for resources of any kind. Yeah.
More questions? Raise your hand and we'll bring the mic. Discussion, success story.
Cool. The other thing I want to reiterate is Mike said earlier he's happy to have people take a look at his device. So if during lunch or during this break or at any time you want to come up and chat with him and take a look, he's happy to have you do that as well, right? Oh, great.
We've got one taker for the comment.
Cool.
Everybody knows it's Nancy, the one who talks too much. I just had a comment about that woman that I was working with the TBI. We were getting her a tablet through the TEP program. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted people to know, if you weren't aware, that the TEP's now getting more and more involved with getting iPhones and Androids. And
yes.
Oh, that was another question too that just reminded me.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the apps and things,
mm-hmm.
Are those available only for Apple products, or are they available for Android as well?
Android and Windows both also have some things. We have found that Apple has more. I would say the apps and the accessories there's more options through Apple, but there are some on Android and Windows.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I just wanted to add about the TEP thing too is, so TEP is a great funding source for certain things, and one thing it's been really helpful with too is for patients who have Medicare as their only insurance funding. Medicare pays 80% of communication systems, but then there's a 20% copay, and we've been really successful with TEP helping to pay the copay part of it. So that's another, just a plug for more funding options.
Another funding option is your local Kiwanis. It's our signature project. You do have to have a diagnosis of autism, but they've funded hundreds of iPads throughout the state and an app and a case through the generosity of the Kiwanians.
That's a great point. Mike, is there anything else you want to chat about, or do you want to just let people chat with you during the break? Is there anything else? Yeah? There's something else you want to say? Oh, it looks like you're asking a question. If there's anybody else who has anything while he's getting that ready, let us know. Yeah.
Thanks. I had a question for Mike on how many AugComs you've used over your lifetime. And also, is there a recycling program or a reuse program for people who might have purchased and not been successful with their item?
Those are great questions. Do you want Mom to answer about how many you've tried? Yeah.
Mike has had his first device he got in first grade, and we unfortunately had to put up with that poor choice until he was in fifth grade. That's when he got his first PRC device. This is his second PRC device, and we have the new Accent at home, but we were a little nervous having a brand new device and doing the presentation because I don't know it as well as he does. So he's had 3 PRC devices and 1 device prior to that. And what we do is we always buy the warranty because Mike's device is his life. So PRC is really good about sending out a backup for us as soon as we send it in. But we keep devices, so just even in that mailing time, we have something to use before we get our loaner device.
Yeah. That's a great point. So to your question about like donating or things like that, we do recommend a lot of times that people keep if their old system is still functioning, we recommend keeping it in the closet so that if something happens with the new system, you have a backup. But in terms of devices that aren't being used even for that purpose. Our clinic takes some loan devices because we use them as loaners for new people who are learning to use systems, or over at the hospital, we sometimes will loan them to inpatients who have a temporary need. So we do accept some devices, but we have a lot of regulations given the hospital piece of it, so we can't always. The other places I would recommend are connecting with those loan libraries. The ATLC is in that handout, the resources handout. That's for public schools to borrow loan devices. And then the Wisconsin AT for All is a place where you can sell, or I think there's loan and for sale equipment, is that right? So that's another place where you could connect with them and let them know what you have and see if that's something that they could either help you sell to somebody else who might be able to use it, or put it into their loan pool. That would be my recommendation. Otherwise, if your device is like totally dead and it doesn't work anymore, Best Buy, I've had a couple users who have taken them to Best Buy, and they have a computer recycling program, and they're like, what's this? And you say, well, it's like a computer, and they're like, okay, we'll take it. So that's another place just to get rid of equipment that's not working anymore. There's some regulation, though. You can only take like 3 things a day or something. Like my mom had taken a bunch of computer stuff and they only took 3, and then she had to go back the next day and take a monitor and a laptop or something else. So just so you know, don't drive there with 10 devices, because I don't know if they'll take them all at once. It looks like he's almost got his message ready, but is there anything else that you guys wanted to chat about?
I'm getting my steps in. I'll just step right over to training camp.
Just wanted to know if it's exhausting operating the device, because you're using muscle movements all the time. Does it get exhausting if you're talking for a long time?
Do you get exhausted, Mike?
He fatigues later. I mean, he's not going to say that, but he does fatigue later in the day. He does fatigue later in the day, and that's why he really appreciates his notebook method for his speeches, because he'll work for hours and days and weeks on, getting a presentation ready, because he can only do so much at a time. And I guess I just really want one other thing about access system. Mike has a good friend, Casey. Don't forget about feet with access system. Casey runs his device with his toes.
Yeah, that's a great point. I will talk about fatigue with the eye gaze systems a little bit. So people who use their eyes to control their devices, we see a lot of fatigue right at the beginning of starting to use those systems. And you don't think about it because you're like, you use your eyes all day. But when you're really focusing on things to make selections on the device, we have some users who can only go about 10 minutes the first few weeks that they have it, 10 minutes at a time, and then a rest. And then, because those are muscles that you don't use for that purpose, but they do build stamina, and they get to the point where they can use it all day without feeling overly fatigued. And I would imagine, Mike, for you, maybe it's the same. Like over the time that you've used your head array as your strategy, your neck has probably gotten more strong and your body has gotten more used to that movement. Would you agree with that? Yeah? Mike has an idea about another topic to chat about, I think. Any other questions while he's finishing that message up? I have some. Yep, they're here. So we can pull those out during the break, and then I actually I'm leaving after the second break, but I can keep them out during the second break as well, and then I'll just pack up from there. So yeah, if people want to check those out, and maybe I'll put them kind of on the back table so that you can pop back at some point and give them a try. I only brought touchscreen devices. I didn't bring any devices that have the alternative access, but some of them have the ability to do alternative access, and I could show you what it looks like. I just don't have the switches and things with. But I did bring several different types of touchscreen, and I have some key guards, and I have the touchscreen ones show the different language systems too, which is cool.
So while Mike's composing his message, I'm just going to read the presenter contact information. Mike Hipple, and that's Hipple, and his email, which you can see on the screen, that's in green, is mike4@new.rr.com.
We had to change providers because we got mad at Running Around.
Oh, uh-oh.
So it's Mike Hipple at Gmail.
So Mike Hipple, all one word, at gmail.com.
There's a 4 in there though. Mike Hipple 4 and then at
Mikehipple 4 at gmail.com. And then Abygail Marx, you can also find in the Wisconsin .edu directory if you lose this. But her email is Abygail, Abygail .Marx, MARX, at wisc.edu.
And I will just point out that that's not the typical spelling of Abigail. So if you search for ABI, I won't come up. Abygail. My mom didn't do that to be clever. She just thought that was how it was spelled. And now I have a lifetime of not having my doctor be able to look up my information on the first try. But I guess it's fun to have a unique name. It seems like he's trying to, it's just not, it seems like it's not being as responsive as it usually is, Mike. Would you say so? So Mike was doing a presentation yesterday, and there were some technical difficulties. It sounds like his head array, maybe the connection, the Bluetooth connection or something is not as good as it usually is. Do you want to talk specialty care? Or specialty devices? I'm not sure. Can you get us the first letter, and then we can... And I think the break is starting in like 2 minutes, so if anybody needs to use the bathroom or do any of that while he's finishing up too, we'll be in here.
So that concludes your presentation. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Let's give a round of applause for Abby and Mike.
Thank you guys so much for having us.